All right. Hey, David, good to see you. Thanks for making time to talk to me. As you know, I've been working with your team and we've been just discussing, how this shift has been in leadership and things are changing and some things have come to light. And I just, wanted to get a chance to kind of hear from you how you think things are going and maybe talk about a few things. So, how's that sound?
Yeah, would love that. Well, I would also like to thank you for the time that you've been putting into helping us out. You know my frustrations,
Yeah.
and I've been very vocal about them. So
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully we can come together and sort all of this out.
Yeah. So, remind me how long you've been with the organization. I don't have that in my notes.
So I've been with the organization for 5 years, but in my current role, 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really have appreciated your perspective of the history of the organization and just kind of where things have been. And I know that there's been a lot of transition and a lot of people stepping into new roles, but I just want to tell you that I think you bring a lot to the table with your institutional knowledge. It's super important to have someone at the table who has that. And I also really appreciate your, cut to the chase decision making ability, which is important. There's a lot going on and a lot of things need to be moving along. So just wanted to, encourage you to be you and all of that. But I did want to mention a couple things. I've heard from a few people, and and I've also observed personally some of the leadership meetings, and as things are going, the shift, and I know you've told me your concerns, but the shift is to bringing more people to the table to make decisions. And I know that's frustrating. So, one thing that I wanted to mention is that it's been hard for people to feel comfortable or really okay with bringing their opinions to the table, partly because you have all this institutional knowledge. And so it's like they don't feel comfortable with that. And I've observed a couple times in meetings where people have been sharing things and they don't get to finish because you're ready to make a decision. And, I'll be honest, I think you probably have the right decision, but it doesn't give people a chance to say what they need to say. And as the consultant, I can represent some of these people who maybe haven't really recognized the value you bring. But let me just stop right there and just, how's that sound to you? I mean, does that resonate at all with you? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I would thank you for your candor and your feedback. My frustration is that because we're trying to make everything collaborative and we don't have your traditional hierarchy structure, if we would create that structure, and this is what I've been pushing for, I've been pushing for pretty adamantly,
Hmm.
we would be able to actually show some sort of progress. Right now, we're almost like we're stalled
Yeah.
because we're trying to do everything. It's like there's too many hands in the pie,
Mm.
right? And no
Yeah.
one ends up making a decision. And so my frustration is if they would listen to me, take my suggestions for how we should organize our structure, our leadership structure,
Mm.
we could start to see positive steps in the right direction. So that's my frustration.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me what it would look like to, allow for a little bit more of a process for more people, to almost to slow down, to speed up.
Mhm.
What would it look like for you? I mean, I know you're frustrated with the speed, but just, what would that look like? Thinking about someone else at the table who's maybe newer, who maybe has an idea, tell me about that a little bit.
I still want people to feel like they can bring their problems to me. I do. I still want them to feel like they can give me real and authentic feedback,
Mm.
but not at the expense of speed
Mm.
and action. And I
Yeah.
feel like everything we're doing is at the expense of speed and action.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
also don't want to walk into a bad decision, right? Because we didn't think things through. But at a certain point, you have to leave the table with an actionable step. And we're just not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hear you that does it resonate with you that there has this your presence in some of these meetings has been overbearing or at least, kind of stopping things in the name of moving progress along?
Yeah, I can definitely be very vocal about my position, and I'm pretty forthright and can come across as rather aggressive with it. Even
Yeah.
though I don't always mean to, it can come
Yeah.
across. I feel very strongly about my positions, and so yeah, it can come across in such a way where it may potentially shut people down. I can see
Yeah.
that.
So, I think it's important for you to know that it's potentially, going to become something that is going to inhibit you as a leader. The feedback is that strong from others, and that the collaboration is important with where the company's going. The decision making that you bring is important as well. And so, what I'm hoping to, have you hear is a way to move forward that allows you to know that the decision making is important, but that the organization and the leadership wants more voices at the table.
Mhm.
How, how does that sit with you?
I'll be honest, it frustrates me. Right,
Mm,
it does. I'm not going to try to hide the fact that I think it's the wrong decision. I think it's the wrong way to move forward.
yeah.
And this is a company I care about and I've been with for a while. But I feel like this could be a situation where my opinion is not being respected, right?
So, what are some things that you could do knowing that this feedback is on the table, that allows you to maintain your integrity, but also opens the door to thinking a little differently?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm very data driven. I'm very analytical. And so if I can see that working collaboratively moves the needle,
Hmm.
then okay, this is something I can work with. But I feel like the needle has not been moved in quite some time since we introduced our new structure. So if I can see
Mm,
that progress is being made, okay, I can get on board. I can be a team player.
yeah. Yeah. So back to, just understanding that this feedback has come from multiple people. Um, and wanting again to preserve your own integrity of moving things along. Can you think about ways when you're in these meetings that you could respond differently?
I could, yeah, absolutely. No, that is fair. I could absolutely hold my opinion, while still stating the way I feel about things. But I could. There are times where I can interrupt, and I will position myself in such a way to where the other person may potentially just feel small or like, what's the point?
Hmm.
So, I think an actionable step that I could take is I could bite my tongue. I could allow them to finish their thought. They may have something good to bring to the table, and I could potentially need to recognize that.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that you don't want to make bad decisions or go into something without because of all the data. And so, you know, I would encourage you to lean into what you just said. I think that's important. What, when you think about not making bad decisions, is it possible that you personally don't have all the information?
100%. I can. I think it's a good question because it's 100% possible that I'm a person. I'm not right all the time,
Mhm.
right? There is a real possibility that I have a very limited scope and someone else can help add to that point of view and bring some information to the table that's useful. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about just where we are. I think we're we kind of got things on the table. I hear you acknowledging some things, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate your maturity and owning your part. Um, I'd like to talk about what it could look like maybe over the next, week as, going into meetings. Do
Mhm.
you have any thoughts about how this could look for you that would be a little different?
Yeah, I think kind of like what we were discussing a second ago is instead of getting riled up about all of these people giving their opinions and positions and me not feeling like we're moving, allow them the opportunity to speak, allow them the opportunity to share freely what's on their mind, and then come together in such a way where we bring together the best talking points and then maybe create an action plan that way. That would probably be a better way of moving forward, especially if the company is so adamant about using a collaborative type effort.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that's a good plan. One last, just a couple other questions. When you're in the meetings, I've been around your meetings before, and so some observations I've made is that there's a couple very extroverted, strong voices, yours being one of them. And I think some of the newer people at the table maybe aren't as articulate and maybe a little more introverted. And so I would just encourage you to recognize that the value they have may not be as clear until they get a little bit of time to ruminate on what they're bringing to the table. Um, what do you think about that?
I think there's some truth to that. I find there's some strong personalities in that room,
Mm.
and there are absolutely others who do not have that sort of personality profile. And but with my experience with introverts, I find them to be the ones who think things through a little better.
Mm.
They typically have more fully formed thoughts. Um,
Mm.
so that's also something. You bring up another good point. I could potentially try to draw more out of them instead of letting the big personalities run the room.
Yeah. Yeah. What if you ask some questions
Yeah.
instead of make statements?
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think once again, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, that's probably something that I will need to start incorporating to get more out of those particular individuals, because it is the same few handful of people
Mm.
that typically end up running the entire show.
Yeah. So, what do you think that means for people to see you as a leader? Like, how do you think version A and version B, which sounds different to me?
Yeah. This is where it's hard because I've always, my vision of a leader is someone who just it takes action, moves forward, does so courageously. But I also think because the opinions can be so strong that people don't feel like they're actually a part of the team,
Mhm.
and maybe don't feel like I potentially have their back
Yeah.
either. That it's more my show,
Hmm.
and I could see that potentially causing a lack of buy-in.
Yeah.
People typically buy in a little bit more when there's a certain level of ownership in the decision making process. So there's probably some changes that some there's probably some self analysis that needs to be made,
Yeah.
and some changes onto how to best lead, and some changes on how I need to perceive what leading is.
Yeah. Well, our time here is kind of coming to an end, but I want to be able to check back in with you, and I'd like for us to make some plans, and I can work with you on this. Thank you for being open. It's never fun to hear that your peers and your team is, got some frustration with you, but I think
Well, tomorrow's meeting is going to be a lot of fun for everyone.
because you're just going to open up and be like, hey, everybody, bring it all.
Yeah, let's go. Let's air it out. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I hope so, because there's so much value in what you bring. And at times a strong personality can, you know, just, you can almost like ruin the value you bring, and people shut it down because they get tired of being shut down themselves. So yeah. All
Great.
right. Well, thank you for your time, and we'll touch base. I'd like to hear how tomorrow's meeting goes. Especially after you have kind of had some of this revelation. So,
Well, thank you, Christy.
okay, it's supposed to keep recording and give each other feedback. So you
Yes.
give me feedback. Okay.
I thought you did excellent. I really do. I think, I tried to throw in some things that made you try to okay, how do we bring the conversation back to the real issue, which is me, right? And so I tried to divert. I thought you did a good job of bringing the conversation back to the point that it needed to be at. I think you did a good job of framing your questions in such a way that made me reflect on myself and the ownership that I'm taking over the situation or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's the part that I play?
Mm-hmm.
So no, honestly, if there was anything that I thought, hey, I would probably word this a little differently. I thought this was awkward. I would give it, but off the top of my head, I don't really have anything constructive, which I know is not particularly constructive. But I thought you did a good job.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's a hard one. You're a nice person for that. Uh, I don't know that everybody moves to the other side that quickly.
Yeah, I was I was a little quick to. This is where it's stuff because like I have my own way of actually looking at things, and that bleeds into this role play of like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, is it? So, but you're absolutely right. There's some people who are definitely going to be more combative,
Hmm.
and I definitely was not.
Yeah.
It's not really within my nature.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna hit stop.